19th century London was awash with stories of a tall, thin, devil-like man with a cloak and clawed hands, red eyes, and the ability to breathe fire. He would attack random people and then jump over 10-foot-high walls to escape. What was London's Spring Hill Jack? The first report of Spring Hill Jack came from a servant girl, Mary Stevens. While walking home from her parents one night, a figure leapt at her from a dark alley, grabbing her with his claws and kissing her face while tearing at her clothes. She reported when she felt the claws against her skin, they felt cold and clammy, like the hands of a corpse. The girl screamed in terror, prompting the assailant to run away. The next day, in the same area, a figure of similar description jumped in front of a carriage, causing the driver to crash and injure himself. Several witnesses described seeing the man responsible escape by jumping over a 9-foot-tall fence while cackling in a high-pitched laugh. These attacks came to the attention of the Lord Mayor of London, who at a public hearing revealed the contents of an anonymous letter he had received from a resident of one of the affected boroughs. It read, "It appears that some individuals of, as the writer believes, the highest ranks of life, have laid a wager with the mischievous and foolhardy companion that he durst not take upon himself the task of visiting many of the villages near London in 3 different disguises: a ghost, a bear, and a devil, and moreover that he will not enter a gentleman's gardens for the purpose of alarming the inmates of the house. The wager was, however, been accepted, and the unmanly villain has succeeded in depriving 7 ladies of their senses, 2 of whom are not likely to recover, but to become burdens to their families. At one house, the man rang the bell, and on the servant coming to open the door, this worse than brute stood in no less dreadful figure than a spectre clad most perfectly. The consequence was that the poor girl immediately swooned, and has never from that moment been in her senses. Just seeing Spring Hill Jack made her catatonic. The affair has now been going on for some time, and strange to say, the papers are still silent on the subject. The writer has reason to believe that they have the whole history at their finger ends, but, through interested motives, are induced to remain silent. The Lord Mayor was skeptical of the letter, but a man in the audience confirmed. Servant girls about Kensington, Hammersmith, and Ealing tell dreadful stories of this ghost or devil. Newspapers received piles of letters about sightings of the beast, with one letter claiming several young women in Hammersmith have been frightened into dangerous fits, and some severely wounded by a sort of claws the miscreant wore on his hands. 2 cases in particular drew great attention. Jane Alsop reported that on the night of 19 February 1838, she answered the door of her father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer, who told her to bring a light, claiming, "We have caught Spring Hill Jack here in the lane." She brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment she had handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flame from his mouth, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Miss Alsop reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared to be very tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. Without saying a word, he caught hold of her and began tearing her gown with his claws, which she was certain were of some metallic substance. She screamed for help and managed to get away from him and ran towards the house. He caught her on the steps and tore her neck and arms with his claws. She was rescued by one of her sisters, after which her assailant fled. On 28 February 1838, 9 days after the attack on Miss Alsop, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were returning home after visiting their brother, a butcher who lived in a respectable part of Limehouse. Miss Scales stated in her deposition to the police that as she and her sister were passing along Green Dragon Alley, they observed a person standing in an angle of the passage. She was walking in front of her sister at the time, and just as she came up to the person who was wearing a large cloak, he spurted a quantity of blue flame in her face, which deprived her of sight and so alarmed her that she instantly dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits, which continued for several hours. Her brother added that on the evening in question, he had heard the loud screams of one of his sisters moments after they had left his house, and on running up Green Dragon Alley, he found his sister Lucy on the ground in a fit, with her sister attempting to hold and support her. She was taken home, and he then learned from his other sister what had happened. She describes Lucy's assailant as being of tall, thin, and gentle manly appearance, covered in a large cloak, and carrying a small lamp or bullseye lantern, similar to those used by the police. The individual did not speak, nor did he try to lay hands on them, but instead walked away quickly. Every effort was made by the police to discover the author of these and similar outrages, and several persons were questioned, but were set free. In August 1877, one of the most notable reports about Spring Hill Jack came from a group of soldiers in Aldershot's barracks. This story went as follows. A sentry on duty at the North Camp peered into the darkness, his attention attracted by a peculiar figure advancing towards him. The soldier issued a challenge, which went unheeded, and the figure came up beside him and delivered several slaps to his face. A guard shot at him with no visible effect. Some sources claim that the soldier may have fired blanks at him, others that he missed or fired warning shots. The strange figure then disappeared into the surrounding darkness with astonishing bounds. He adds that the panic became so great at Aldershot that sentries were issued ammunition in order to shoot the night terror on sight, following which the appearances ceased. In the autumn of 1877, Spring Hill Jack was reportedly seen at Newport Ark in Lincoln, Lincolnshire, wearing a sheepskin. An angry mob supposedly chased him and cornered him, and just as in Aldershot a while before, residents fired at him to no effect. As usual, he was said to have made use of his leaping abilities to lose the crowd and disappear once again. Skeptical commentators at the time dismissed Spring Hill Jack as a mass hysteria, and no one was ever successfully persecuted for any attack. There was a popular rumor that an Irish nobleman who lived in the area of some of the attacks, and was a subject of gossip for his heavy drinking and carousing and antagonism against the police, was carrying out the attacks as some sort of practical joke, or to make the police look ineffectual. It seems like this possibility hinges on the reliability of witnesses and media. Obtaining a cloak and metal claws and using them to attack or scare someone is at least plausible. But no prankster could jump over a 9-foot wall or absorb gunshots from a sentry's rifle. So, which is it? Exaggerated, mundane occurrences? Elaborate pranks? Mass hysteria? Or a fire breathing guy with a cape and claws who could jump 10 feet in the air? Last night, me, a 19-year-old female, and 3 of my friends, which I will call K, Z, and S for privacy, made the 2-hour drive from Portland, Oregon to the coast near Seaside. We first went to the shipwreck beach. I believe it's called Peter Iredale, but it was really cold and dark, so we headed further south because of one of the guys knew of a good parking lot with no time limit. We walked onto the sand nearby, about 20 yards, and me and Kay sat near a log mostly covered in sand. Then Z and S decided to walk further down the beach to find a fort they had discovered last time we visited, and I lit a cigarette and talked to Kay for a second. 2 minutes later, Z and S returned talking about how they only made it about 200 yards before they saw a very tall, moving mass. It was very dark, nearing 1 a.m., and anything that wasn't 10 feet in front of you was just a blob. Z has had problems with psychosis in the past and asked for reality checks pretty regularly. But S saw it moving as well and pointed the shape out to us. Against the skyline of grass, I'd estimate about 10 to 13 feet. Once we all had eyes on it, it was very clear that it was not only moving, but moving towards us. We booked it. I mean, running for your life kind of booked it. I even sprained my ankle and just kept going. Eventually, we climbed the stairs back up to the car and were ready to get the fuck out. Unfortunately, Z and S are horror movie protagonists and really wanted to see what it was. Z began theorizing that it was a really tall guy or a big tree that was swaying in a weird way, mostly in an effort to not freak out. Me and Kay told them that we stay back and set a 10-minute timer, and if they weren't back by then and they didn't answer the phone, we'd have to call the cops. They were gone for almost exactly 5 minutes, and as they were walking up the path, we could hear them whispering, "Just don't look back." Apparently, when they went back to find out what it was, it had moved to the log that Kay and I were previously sitting by. Definitely freaked everyone the fuck out. Me and Kay made the drive back almost immediately, but the other 2, who came in a separate car, were really curious. They ended up going to a different parking lot, sleeping in the car, and returning to check in the morning. When they returned, there was nothing there. No tall trees, nothing that could possibly even be mistaken as whatever that was. They did say there was an indent in the sand in both places we saw it, like something heavy was standing there. Circa 2012, I was in combat training with the Marine Corps in Southern California on fire watch one night, roughly 2 a.m., with 2 Navajo guys. We got on the subject of skinwalkers, telling stories that our grandparents or others had told us. So we are all generally feeling a little creeped out just from the stories, when we hear the most distorted coyote howl any of us had ever heard from what we could guess was about 50 yards away. It was like if someone was slowing down a vinyl recording of a coyote howl with their finger. We were all frozen and stark white. We just all stared at each other for a bit, sweating. We finally pointed our flashlights in the direction of the distorted howl, and we all saw what looked like a coyote head sitting on a fence post. We were just staring at it in the shaky lights, absolutely silent. The head was pointed our direction, and its eyes were open, but they didn't shine. They were just black. Finally, I say, maybe someone found a dead coyote and put its head on the post? Sometimes farmers will hang a dead coyote on a fence to keep other coyotes away. Our training was taking place on large open cattle fields. Right after I say this, the head turns slightly to the left and moves off the post. From behind the post, a coyote walks out on its hind legs with its jaw and tongue dangling like they were broken, and then just walks into the darkness out of reach of our flashlights. We all immediately shit our actual pants and book it the fuck back to where everyone was sleeping and proceeded not to sleep properly for the rest of our time out there. All three of us saw it, and all three of us know what we saw. Moral of the story: speak of the devil, and he shall appear. I decided to make this post because I've never come across a story that lined up with the beings I saw. When I was in high school, me and 4 other friends were hanging out, and we decided to go to a park area at a nearby lake. So we park in the parking lot and start heading down the path that leads to this gazebo-covered picnic area with about 6 picnic tables under it. It's around 8 or 9 o'clock during the summer, so the sun is setting and it's starting to get dark. My friends and I are being loud and joking with each other and not really paying attention to everything around us. But I notice that there are 2 guys under the gazebo. So I turn and I'm like, guys, there are people over there. So we look at them for a second, and there's one guy that has his arms crossed and leaning up against one of the gazebo posts, and the other is sitting at one of the picnic tables with his arms on the table. They looked completely proportionate and human. One guy had a hoodie on with his hood up, and the other guy had a hat on. So I yell, "Hey, what's going on?" They don't say anything or move. I decided to walk over to them, and one of my friends decided to follow me, but they were about 5 to 10 feet behind me. I'm walking up to the gazebo and ask again, "Hey, what's up, guys?" No response. I'm still not noticing anything weird about them, other than the fact that they are not responding. I get about 2 feet away from them, and I approached in a way so that I had one to my left and one to my right. I look at the guy leaning on the post and notice I can't really see in details of where his clothes end or if he had a mouth or eyes. And this guy is about 4 feet away from me. And the guy sitting down is about a foot away from me. And I look down at him and see his skin, his clothes were the same. As in, they were like this fuzzy, almost pixelated black. He had a perfectly human-shaped face, but no eyes, no nose holes, no mouth. At that moment, I just freeze, and it takes all my strength to get my body to start stepping back from them. I can't speak, and there is no way I can turn around. I felt like my energy was being drained out of me. This whole time that was probably mere seconds, but felt like a long time. They didn't move an inch or speak. I finally stepped back far enough, and me and my friend that followed me took off running down the path, and our other friends followed. It definitely was an I should not be here vibe from them, and very bad energy coming from them. My other friend saw them pretty close and felt the same way I did. I cannot explain it, but if anyone has had something like this happen to them, I would love to hear about it. It was during my third deployment to Iraq. The platoon had taken up residence in two houses in a village several miles south of Haditha. One day, I heard our translator having a heated discussion with two local men. I grabbed my gear and my rifle and walked out to the road to investigate. I asked the translator what was going on. He tells me that these two men are crazy and assures me that they are not dangerous. I ask what they want, and he mumbles about them being superstitious or something along those lines. He assures me that everything is okay and my attention is not needed. It took a bit of prying, but the translator finally says that they are having a wolfman problem. But they are afraid that if they shoot at it, the local troops will be alarmed and attack their house. They tell us that this wolfman has been coming around late at night and has already killed a few sheep, and they are worried that it's going to start attacking their family. So I assume somewhere in translation the word dog has turned into wolf and is somehow being conveyed to me by the translator as wolfman. So I tried to clarify, do they mean a dog? The translator is a bit hesitant, almost like he's embarrassed that his countrymen are wasting everyone's time by believing in such nonsense. But they are adamant that their house is being besieged by a wolfman. Again, I ask if it's just a big dog, and no, it's a wolfman. So I ask if there are wolves in Iraq, and they are all in agreement that yes, there are wolves in Iraq, but there are no wolves in this part of the country, and it's not a wolf or a large dog that has been killing their sheep. It's a wolfman. The translator is trying to usher them away, but at this point, I am very intrigued and still a bit confused over the whole dog, wolf, wolfman thing. So I asked them to describe what they are seeing. They tell me that every few nights it comes around. They first see it on four legs as it skulks around their small compound. But then it stands up like a man, walking on two legs. It growls, and it has lunged at the men. But as they retreat, it turns its attention to the sheep, their own dogs refusing to help protect human or sheep. They tell me the creature has killed a few of their sheep, and that they have even found one of the bodies ripped apart with portions of it eaten away. They have been hesitant to shoot for fear of troop involvement. The translator says that he has heard of such a creature, and even though this type of story has been spread through the area by various people, it is no more than superstitions and delusions. He assures me that there's no such thing as a wolfman. I tell the two men that they should feel free to protect themselves and their livestock, and with my interest piqued, I get the men to agree to allowing us to stop by from time to time and set up an observation post while we are out on patrol. A couple of nights later, I join a night patrol and we head towards the house. We are greeted by one of the men and he gives us entry to the compound. We go up to the roof and set out sentries to overlook a nearby bridge. About an hour later, the homeowner comes up with a panicked look on his face. He's talking really fast, excitement and concern in his voice and body language. He's wanting me to come with him. I tell 2 others to come with me, and we all follow the man. He leads us to the other side of the house, and we exit onto an enclosed courtyard where the sheep are being kept. The sheep are making plenty of noise, and the man is pointing to a dark corner of the yard. I strain my eyes to see what he's pointing at. Finally, I see it. A large wolf/dog just standing in the corner. I asked the other 2 guys with me if they see it too, and they both agreed that it's a wolf or a dog. It moved behind a small section of wall, and I could hear popping and cracking noises, like joints or knuckles being cracked. When it stepped out from behind the wall, it was upright on 2 legs. It swiftly and effortlessly jumped the perimeter wall, and we could hear it running away on 2 feet. I conveyed to the man the best I could. If that thing ever showed up again, feel free to shoot it if he could, and if he did, to please let me know. Hello, listeners. Thank you for stopping by to check out the latest episode of Strange and Unusual Stories. If you have experienced something strange and unusual and have a titillating story to tell, check the description down below and send me a quick email. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, leave a comment and give me a thumbs up, as it really helps my channel. If you would like to keep up with future content, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. See you all next time, and as always, I am your host, Marie Lives the Horror.